All right. Hey there. My name's Steve, and today I wanted to talk about friendship a little bit. You can call me Quash, though. This is going to be a little bit of like an unfiltered conversation about my overall thoughts on friendship and like how I feel like it's been kind of evolving it's been an evolving sort of, it's the role it's been taking in my life. It's kind of been evolving quite a bit, especially in the last year. And I think really right now, I've been really kind of seeing that come to form and kind of causing friction in my life a little bit. And it kind of makes it a little bit complicated. And it's like really causes it can potentially cause a lot of confusion for me. And I actually think this is something that is becoming more common in our generation, especially as I'm really like putting myself out there and trying to really live like a really fleshed out adult life. I've been noticing a lot of different dynamics of friendships, and I think they're a lot more complicated than they used to be. And I could definitely be a part of the problem there. And this is something like this video is kind of a way to express my struggles with that almost, and kind of almost try to navigate like what it really means to have a healthy dynamic in friendship, have a really healthy way of it playing a role in your life and having it really be and really garnering the benefits from it in a way to have it like kind of enrich your life. Um the premise behind me trying to do that in the first place could be relatable for some of you, and that's why I'm kind of making a video like this, because it's like, think of it like an exploratory conversation from friend to friend. And I actually think even the reason to make a video like this is because maybe there's people out there that are curious about this topic, or they or they struggle with friendship too, like I do in some ways. And I don't think it's very embarrassing at all to, but it's a very common struggle. And I wanted to share that and have give a really safe space for an unfiltered conversation and kind of give some thoughts to kind of provoke you guys a little bit. So take from it what you will. And I do have my laptop here with a few notes on like what I thought about friendship overall. I'm a very logical thinker, as you might be able to tell, but I also value feelings a lot. And I think I really do. If you're one of the people in my life that's around me and knows about this, like I'm very, very like intentional, and I'm very dedicated to really making sure like the people I care about know that. And, like that's already a hint into like some of the problems that I would face when it comes to that, when it comes to friendship and things of that nature. Other people might have other types of problems relating to friendship and maybe even other interpersonal connections within your life. And if you have one of those problems and I don't get to talk about it, my fault. But I would love to hear about it. Like if you'd like talk to me about it in the comments, I'm going to probably talk to you about it. And I think it's going to be really interesting and thought provoking. So that's basically like the goal of this video for me, just to like kind of have a really cool discussion about it with people out there that maybe I don't get the chance to meet. And if you are meeting me for the first time, hello. So basically, I've been finding friendships very complicated. And I think the reason I'm searching for friendship in the first place is that, well, obviously you're like, well, you need friends, right? But I think there's more to it than that. Stepping back, it was essentially the culmination of my desire to search for happiness, as any like 20-year-old would really want to do. And, kind of understand like, all right, like I'm out of school. Like, what do I do now? Like, what does it mean to be happy? Like, I have a job. But like, is there more to it? Do I just die now? Like, do I just keep making money? Is it cooked? Right? Like, I don't really know. And that's what I've been really trying to search around, right? And then I've been reading like every self-help book. I've been doing shit, like I've been trying new things, reading like lots of books to kind of understand like, what does it mean? Like, what am I searching for? How can I be fulfilled? Like, this constant like romanticization of this constant like search for what it means to really be satisfied and to not really waste this life, right? There's concepts that you guys might be familiar with, the top 5 regrets of the dying, or, books related to like, oh, these are the keys to a fulfilling life, right? And it's really hard to understand, like people have lots of different takes on like what that actually means. And, it's honestly very confusing. But something that I did find relatively common, no matter what, was interpersonal connection and friendship. And basically the TLDR for that is that friendship is one of life's most beautiful connections. And I think so too, because it has the chance for us to really connect with a lot of different people on a very deep level without a lot of the baggage of other interpersonal connections in our lives, right? So we could think of family members. We're close to family members technically because we have to, right? And there's going to be obviously, let's call it housekeeping relating to being with the family, right? There's going to be moments where for sure with a family that you're not going to like. Whereas with friends, really most of the time when you're with your friends, you're just going to have a good time and they really care for you, right? So I think that in itself is a very beautiful concept. And when I realized that, and when I gave, when you realize that you give more into your friendships and you really care for these people around you, some of my fondest memories in life, and probably with a lot of you guys as well, is, spending time with friends and really diving into things with friends, making new friends, and really getting people that are your tribe and really connect with you on that like deeper level. And I've been understanding that like, the benefits to this are scientifically proven, not just like anecdotally proven, where, having that strong support network of friends, it like manages your stress levels. They can pick you up when you're down. You can live longer. Like that's kind of crazy, right? Where I think having good friends can really enable you to just be your best self, and they are a reflection of like who you strive to be, and that's pretty cool. And I thought that was really enriching. But as a result, I placed a really high sort of emphasis on friendship, right? So it's like, for me, my unique problem was when I find friends, and when you think that deeply about this and understand that friendship is so important, the people that you do have in your life become that important. And because of that, this introduces a whole slew of problems relating to friendship and what you mean and what you see it as versus what they see it as and what they expect out of friendship and how they navigate friendships. And like, then the behaviors relating to it gets so complicated. So there's things like communication issues, there's people pleasing, people have different values and just very different ways of living life. And you have to come to terms with understanding that different people can see certain topics and situations differently than you, and you're not really allowed to change that. And that's just usually a byproduct of their upbringing and their values. And yet again, so that makes it really hard because usually these things are deep rooted within people. Let's say, for example, being late to things, right? Some people really don't like it when people are late. Other people are super chill with that. Some people are bad texters. There's people out there that like only text you when they need something, right? Is that true? But then they're a great person to you otherwise. Or you can't really confide in people, but they're great as a casual friend, right? And it's like, there's like so much nuance to it. And like, what even is a friend, right? What even is a friend at that point, right? So I would, as any normal human would do, I read a book about it. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is referencing a book called Frientimacy by someone named Shasta Nelson. So basically, this is a relatively more niche book. It's not huge, but it's a book covering this exact topic and exploring the idea of how to deepen friendships in the first place. I'm also going to be just overall referencing some other topics about it. Something I really recommend using as the basis for this study is that there's this Harvard Business Review study about the key to happiness, and I believe it's called the Lifelong Study, and it's several studies combined tracking the entire lives of people in order to determine the biggest factors for happiness. And consistently overall throughout the lives of these people, it has been determined that strong relationships with other people is the biggest factor by far, irregardless of anything else, money, success, anything like that. But like, I guess as people, we just want to connect with other people more than anything else, right? So we don't need per se any of these other things in order to truly deep down be happy and be fulfilled and really feel connected. And I've kind of reoriented my life around that. And I'm going to name off a few of the issues that I've had because of this. In my opinion, I've always had an issue with friendships being more one-sided in the sense that I give more to my friendships than people would potentially give back to me. Not to say that I'm scorekeeping, but more so that it just ends up being that way. And it's a very easy sense of resentment. The reason I give so much to my friendships in the first place is kind of a byproduct of what I just explained, right? I understand now that friendships and interpersonal connection are like the biggest indicator to success, not success, but are the biggest indicator to true contentment in life. And because of that, and because I'm so cognizant of that, I kind of pour everything into my friendships. Like you're my day one. Like I'm gonna invest everything into you. Like I'm gonna, like you, whatever you need, I'm there for you. I'll put myself out there for you. That's the way I treat friendship, and like almost like to an alarming point. Like I have the reputation of God's strongest pleaser, and I'm not really saying this out of ego or anything, but I just really cared and cherished the people around me because I was very grateful to have them in my life. So for me, whenever a friendship is tiered towards one side or the other, I always find that it could be a little bit hard, especially when it's like significantly teetered towards one side. And for me, I found that a way to overcome this was that when we believe that it's the job of, I'm going to read it off here. When we believe it's the job of other people to make us feel loved and worthy, like parents, spouses, bosses, or even our friends in this case, right? We buy into one of the most damaging myths ever. That we're only basically as lovable as someone else makes us feel. And there are many risks to this view. Particularly potent is how, on the one hand, we might blame others and hold them responsible for how we feel, and then we judge ourselves so harshly that we will do anything to earn affection. The alternative option being we can know our own value so deeply that we're willing to admit that we have room to grow, and without feeling bad in that sense. So fundamentally, what I extracted from this is that this means when you're so focused on making others happier and not necessarily yourself happier, even though like it's scientifically proven that when you do things for others, it does produce more happiness. The byproduct of this is that it makes your happiness technically extrinsic. And this because you're placing your happiness in other people. So when you invest effort, or I invest effort into making someone else happy, it places a sort of pressure on the friendship in a sense, because it really is on the other person now to kind of give that back and show their appreciation. And if they don't really demonstrate that in the same way, and your happiness could actually be impacted by what they do, which is not a good thing, right? They always say happiness should come from within. And, although friendship, is a two-way street, I believe in order to make both of you happy, you have to really you have to make sure you're happy, and then you're just expressing that you're happy. Like truly, there should be nothing to come from the friendship when you express these things. Of course, I don't think you should just like always be oblivious to this and kind of just give affection and not expect anything back and just be content, because like that can also rub people the wrong way. But I believe the idea is that it's not necessarily you guys are like keeping tally and trying to give a lot so that you show, and then making sure like with expectation to give back, but more so you're doing it at the level that you're really comfortable with, and then you truly don't really expect anything back. It's truly much more of a celebration of the friendship in the first place, and you do it for that reason, and you just do it because you care for the person, and not much more than that. Because it would be deep down, I think it's deep rooted that when you do these things for other people to like an extreme extent, that you're low key expecting something. Another thing that the book Frientimacy recommends is that you could reframe the way you give things to other people, whether it's your time or your energy or gifts or anything like that. You reframe it from what you gain. And if you take it to an extreme point, it could be copium, and it does sound like a little bit like this. But when you do it in the right way, I could definitely see it being quite helpful. So an example of this is, let's say you drive like really out of your way to pick up a friend, or I've done that. Like I've driven people from my house to their house and literally just back to my house, just because I cared for that person and I did not want them to, take a dangerous route or anything like that, or go on their own, and I wanted them to be safe, right? That for most people, that would probably be like, yo, what, like what, dude? Like I'm so lazy, bro. I'm not doing that shit. There's no way, right? But for me, the book recommends as an example, like what you gain out of going that much out of your way is extra time to be able to talk to that friend and really just connect with them and give yourself a chance to spend time, right? Because fundamentally, I think for the closest friends in my life, it was never about what you do. It's just about being with the friend. I've realized that I don't really care about like cool activities that much, or they're nice, but what's more nice is being able to be in the same space as someone who really cares about you and understands you on that level. So the next piece that I wanted to cover was the concept of if they wanted to, they would, which is, in my opinion, one of the biggest banes of friendship in the 21st century. It's all about like a mismatch between intent, and if they wanted to be a good friend, like they would do the right things, but it's so complicated and builds like all these expectations and really makes a lot of friendships hostile because there's this assumption of if they really wanted to be a good friend, they would do everything in their power to do that thing. At least this is my interpretation of that. And I think this is really, really tough because I think this is actually a subjective topic. So if they wanted to, they would can take, it really means different things for different people. If what does someone doing that thing that you're implying even mean? Being a good friend can look very different for different friendships and for different people. And it's just there's so many variances in culture, beliefs, what people like that define what this even means. And I think it's not even really fair to kind of place assumptions on people based on their actions. And people have so much nuance and detail and like so much about their personalities and what makes them tick and what makes each person so interesting. And why are we going to kind of place this filter on them just because we have a preconception of what we think they should do in order to be a good friend? And I think it actually takes away from the chance for us to have a lot of like really meaningful connections in our lives, and it has probably tarnished a lot of the friendships that we've potentially had. And you may be able to speak about an experience like this. Now, don't get me wrong. I think some people, in spite of this and us reframing our minds to kind of give a lot of people grace and flexibility in this, there's going to be some people that still don't really deserve our energy in this case, and that's totally reasonable in those cases, right? We have to consider as an absolute in our friendships. You have to draw the line somewhere, right? Like, you can't just cope and pretend like total assholes in your life aren't assholes anymore because, you know, maybe that's how they show love. It's really the concept that there is a mismatch between the behavior we expect and the behavior that other people tend to kind of portray and express themselves, and the meaning we attach to these behaviors and or lack thereof, especially, that kind of give us this assumption about a friendship. So, classic example, someone tends to be, let's say, late to certain things, right? I think this is a common one. Some people, I could see them interpreting it as they're late because they don't care about the time they spend together, or they don't care about your time. Because if they wanted to, they would just not be late. And in my opinion, this is technically true to an extent where if you really gave enough of your energy, it doesn't matter about that snowstorm you drove through or the accident on the highway, you definitely could have accommodated for that and still would have valued and still would have made it on time, given if you valued the friendship enough on paper. However, this is not necessarily the case. And a lot of the time, people just value time differently, or they just don't put an emphasis on whether people are late or not, right? I have people that get really mad when you're late. Or I think personally, if you communicate that you're late, then I think it's okay, right? I'm super okay with you as long as you're transparent. Some people just don't care. If you're late, who cares? Once you're here, we're going to have a good time no matter what, right? So yeah, I'm going to use a personal example. I've got a really good friend, David, in my life. He and I basically, he was very late to a lot of our, let's call it friend functions for a very long time. And this came to the point where I believe, not with myself, but there was a few confrontations surrounding him and a couple other friends of ours that kind of devolved into this sort of discussion about what we valued in the first place and like our upbringing surrounding time. And it was a very insightful conversation because what we ended up learning is that we had different upbringings in surrounding time, and it basically came down to how we were raised and how our parents kind of conceived time and how that was passed down to us. So in his family, it was totally okay to show up late to things because that is how they basically ran their lives, and that's how they've always operated. And it was okay, maybe culturally speaking, for them to do that. So that's why for him, it was passed down. And when he meets people that, you know, maybe value that differently, he doesn't know any better. Compared, let's say, to someone like myself, who had much more of a punctual sort of upbringing. You know, you would never catch me being late. Some people have never caught me lacking in that sense, right? And when you put us together, you know, sometimes it just makes for really funny outcomes. Where I remember one time he was like 3 hours late to my birthday. And I thought that was hilarious. I didn't even get mad. I had some other friends that were more mad than me. But, you know, like that's an example where I could see like, damn, you know, if he wanted to, he would just show up on time, right? If he cared. But I think when you talk to him, and I've had really good talks with him about this, like he does, you know, a true friend does care, but it just shows differently. And, just time was not something that he really valued in the past. And we had these insightful conversations, and now, we've had some alignment on that. And now we try to come to an agreement in terms of that. And it's made our friendship even better. So that's one example. Another example is like when people ask about birthdays, or like they don't remember key dates, like anniversaries or things like that. Like I could see that being objective, but then other people could be like, hey, this is totally cool, because why would you define friendship based on a certain day, right? To me, if you're my friend, every day is like another day where you're my friend, and then like it's always a celebration of like our friendship. So like, sure, why define our friendship on just my cognitive ability to remember certain days of the year? So that could be another one. Or people who, let's say, take a very long time to text, or they're just bad texters. Like there's so many more topics. Or people who don't do inviting versus people who are inviting all the time to certain functions. With all of these things, we have to retrain our brain to kind of embrace acceptance versus rejection when being exposed to this kind of feedback. We have to separate the meaning behind it from the actual action, right? Because a lot of the time, there's less meaning to it than you think. And I think that's when you let go of that, I've found my friendships to be a lot more blissful and beautiful, because everyone's got the good in them, right? And then if we focus on that and not what, certain things they do imply, it makes it a lot better for us. So if someone takes a very long time to respond to us, it's not because they don't care, it's just because they took a long time, right? Maybe it wasn't that deep. Maybe you have a friendship that's like that, right? And that we have to retrain our minds to kind of build this level of acceptance, right? When we assume the worst out of the other person, it assumes rejection. So we have to take out the rejection. And maybe if they did assume that, or maybe if they actually did mean that, then that's a different story. But like overall, we have to, confirm. We have to ensure like, oh no, they probably, maybe friendship and what they care about looks different, and we should value that and we should respect that. One of the biggest other concepts that I've learned regarding friendship is also the dichotomy between the depth of friendship and also how good of a friend you are to someone else. So for me, for example, I think there's two metrics. So two zones of being 1 to 3 each. So like this, on this side, let's say, for example, it's the depth of what you talk about with your friend being levels 1, 2, 3. So let's say 1 being like you talk about very surface level topics, interests, hobbies, food, something like that. And then 3 being like really deep topics, like philosophical, what makes you tick, how do you think this way, what you think out of life, what do you feel about me, other people, philosophy on the universe, things of that nature. Whereas 1 to 3 on the other side is just how good of a friend you think they are. And I think these can be two different metrics in any type of combination. So you could have a friend where you're just absolutely stupid with, and you just do degeneracy. You have a friend that you're just a fucking idiot with, right? You just like level 1. You don't talk about anything else, straight stupidity, right? But they're your day one, right? They're one of your closest friends because you just love the time that you spend with them. Versus, let's say you have a friend where you talk in fairly deep topics with a lot of the time, but when you realize it and when you think about how good of a friend are they to you, it's not as much as you think. So balancing this, just because you don't have that level of intimacy doesn't mean that they're not a good friend. And I think also the surface level intimacy can create great friendships. So I wouldn't necessarily kind of like use that as a marker to determine how good of a friendship it was. I can also see this varying between friendships between male and female, male and male, female to female. And I've talked to friends in my life about like what they thought about this and why it could be more or less complicated. I will counter this by saying vulnerability is incredibly important in friendship based on what I read in the book. So like there's a formula or triangle determining what friendship even means. There's a formula or triangle determining like what makes a really great friendship. And the key indicators are positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. So vulnerability being that third piece, being that connecting piece. But you have to really be careful with this one, because if you say develop vulnerability faster than you develop consistency or positivity, then it can be a lot on someone. If it's basically giving trauma dump. where you just overwhelm someone with that, but they're not ready for it, or they're not comfortable with that, or they're not on that level with you. If you ever been in that position, would kind of know like it's just not the vibe, and you don't really want to be doing that. Vulnerability is also not about being weak per se. It's just about showing your weakness is kind of like a way to actually demonstrate your strength as a person. It takes a lot of willpower to actually be vulnerable. And a lot of the times when you are vulnerable and you show vulnerability first, the other person in turn is going to be able to kind of catch on to that and be like, hey, I see what you're putting down, and like I understand, and I'm trying to kind of connect with you too. So you get it. You get vulnerability by giving vulnerability. So yeah, these are like this is a lot of like what I've been thinking about in terms of what if you're like a friend in my life, or if you're going to be a friend in my life, who knows? Or if you're just friends in your own life, I hope some of these thoughts are kind of just, I hope some of these thoughts are kind of helpful to you in terms of why friendships can be so complicated nowadays. This was a bit of a brain splatter, but I hope this was a little bit of a productive one in terms of kind of opening your mind to seeing like, oh, this is a little bit of, the way Quach thinks about friendships is quite interesting. And I could, maybe I don't agree with everything, but you could take some of these points, and for me, that's already a win. And the fact that you've listened this long is already a win in my book, and I really appreciate that. So hopefully you'll be able to connect with me on some of that. I wanted to close with a couple of like thought-provoking quotes about friendship and how, maybe you could reframe your mind about like what it means, or maybe this encourages you to kind of make a new friend, or kind of make a friend based on your values, right? A lot of these are from my favorite book, Flow. I highly recommend that book if you haven't read it already. I've talked a little bit about it in other videos, but I think there's so much deep into that book that's really helped me and kind of validate my own sense of happiness. And I want to extract a little bit from that in order to kind of give you a little bit to take away from. So the first one is in the company of friends that we can most clearly experience the freedom of the self and learn who we really are. A true friend is someone that we can be crazy with, someone who does not expect us to always be true to form, and there are as few things as enjoyable as freely sharing one's most secret feelings and thoughts with another person. Although it sounds commonplace, it in fact requires concentrated attention, openness, and sensitivity. And in practice, this degree of investment in psychic energy in friendship is rare. Few are willing to commit the energy and the time for it. So, if there was basically one main thing that I wanted you to take away from this little discussion, is that I want you to kind of think about what it means to, why friendships in your life could be great or not so great. Maybe areas of improvement for that, why maybe you can try to amend those, and what you could do to be a better friend. Or even better yet, you can just align with people and talk about barriers in your guys' friendship and what we could both do to make it better. And maybe take the time to tell them why you appreciate that person, what things you can do in order to be a better friend, things you can think about to kind of let go a little bit from your friendships and, make them that much more blissful. Because I don't think they're supposed to be that stressful. There's so many other stressors in your life, and, let's just take the time to be that good friend and not make it a source of stress, but more so make it a source of joy. So yeah, if you made it this far, thanks a lot for listening. I hope if you have any questions about like anything that I said, or like any of the topics that I talked about, I would love to talk about it with you, because friendship I've almost been studying this topic, and I think it's a very interesting one, and I think there's a lot of benefits to be had about that, because the benefit is you just make beautiful connections in your life. So yeah, hopefully you managed to take away something from this, and hope you have a good day. I'm actually going to go meet with a friend right after this, so I think this is a very funny segue out. So yeah, thanks so much. See ya.